Heavy check mark live online under the game just chatting. The uptime begin.
しまった。アドオン入れ直さないとダメか。
ITP Few Fun.
はい、アプリルか。ドーブリウトラ。
You see here there is a little separation between the buttons. All the buttons that are below this panel are for the parameters of the currently selected object. So if you click on a different object, the content of these last panels will change.
Orange 366 high.
はい、海やだ
If you
の。
drag the mouse in this little sphere, you rotate the
ボンディア。
If you drag in this magnifier, you can zoom out and zoom in. On this hand, you can slide left, right, and on this, you go inside the active camera. This camera is actually the point of view from where your image is going to be exported. When you click on render here, you export the image that is seen from the camera here, and you can save it as an image or a video file on your computer. The next very important thing that you must understand on Blender is the 3D cursor. Is that icon here that looks like a ring boy. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's like a second mouse, but you can move it in the 3D space, unlike the normal mouse that can only move on the 2D space of your screen. To move this 3D cursor, you just have to press Shift and right-click in the scene at the place where you want to put it.
Okay.
And of course, when we move it for
閉じないとダメか。
And
on this point of view, we don't see exactly where it is. We don't see the distance. So I will show you later how to move it with a more precise distance. So let's suppose that the 3D cursor is here and we create an object with add, meshes, whatever in this list. We've created a cone and you see that this cone is exactly where I left the 3D cursor. So this is one of the uses of the 3D cursor. It lets you decide where is going to appear the next thing that you'll create. And another example, suppose that you create a drawing. Well, let's suppose that this thing is a drawing. It has a shape of a thin donut, but let's imagine that it's a drawing and that it has a complex shape like this, for example. So later, if you rotate your drawing, you will see that the rotation happens around the 3D cursor. Actually, before you start your drawing, it's important that you place the 3D cursor at a point that will be the center of your drawing. Even if you don't have a clear idea of your drawing, you must at least know where should be the center. And in the end, if your drawing doesn't look like what you expected, you can still move the 3D cursor and change the center of your drawing at that new place. To start a drawing on Blender, we have two ways to do it. The first way is to just click on File, New, 2D Animation, and there you have a white canvas and can already draw on it. If you rotate the camera, you can see that you're actually in a 3D space, and up there in the outliner you see that there's a grease pencil object that has been created. In the parameters of its object, down here, you have layers and colors pre-configured. This is the first way. The second way is to start from scratch. This is the way I'm going to show you because at some point you'll have to go back here and you'll have to know how to recreate the canvas, the layers and the color palette. So I'm going to show you this. First, I'm going to clean my workspace by removing some tabs up there. I'm going to remove all the tabs except layout and animation. So I right click on the other tabs and press delete all these ones. Don't worry, if you remove the wrong tab, you can press plus and find it again in this list tab and another way to draw and navigate on Blender. Most of you know that on Blender, normally you need the middle button on the mouse to navigate, to rotate and pan the camera without having to click up there. So we are going to change the configuration of Blender to emulate this middle mouse button with a pen. To do so, we just need to go to Edit, Preferences and go to the Input tab, and here we click on Emulate 3-button mouse. In the menu under this, in the drop down, just keep Alt as the modifier, and this means that when you hold the Alt key and click on the screen with your mouse or with your pen, the software will believe that you are using the middle mouse button. Those of you that are familiar with modeling in Blender know that the Alt key is needed for the loop selection, so if you activate this option here, you'll have to edit your shortcut for the loop selection. If you in Blender know that the Alt key is needed for the loop selection, so if you activate this option here, you'll have to edit your shortcut for the loop selection tool. In my case, I'll also activate the Emulate Numpad option because I use a laptop and I don't have a numeric keyboard on the right. The numpad buttons are used as shortcuts to change the point of view quickly in the 3D viewport, and if you don't have that, you just need to click here on Emulate Numpad so you can use the top buttons on your laptop as shortcuts. Now to use the pen, if you hold the Alt key and drag in the viewport, you rotate the view around the currently selected object. If you hold Alt plus Shift and drag, you move the camera on the side. If you hold Alt plus Control and drag the mouse, you zoom in and out the view. These are the main shortcuts to navigate. To create your drawing, first check that you are in object mode in this drop-down, and then click on Add, Grease Pencil, Blank. Grease Pencil is the name of a drawing object in Blender. So the Grease Pencil object has been created at the place where I left the 3D cursor. It's here in the center. We don't see it because it's an empty drawing for now. And now go to the outliner up there and open the object with this little arrow here. You see there is the name of the object duplicated on 2 levels. You can double click on each of them to change their name. All the items in the outliner are organized like this for now. We have this nested item here, and in our case the green one is the name that you will find later in the 2D animation part, so you have to rename the 2 items.
What about your situation? Or stream setting.
Name them box and box. Now click on the plus button near the tabs up there and choose 2D animation. 2D animation.
I didn't get any opportunities to become a teacher.
Appeared. You see here.
Wow. 待って。Only 3.
Nobody hired me.
3 point.
I'll become a mangaka now.
No. You can't become. You can't become even mangaka. You nothing but you become nothing just は nothing but English teacher. So let's apply
LOL.
Another opportunity.
So appeared is the drawing tools, so don't be confused by the way how it appeared suddenly.
If you really want to become English teacher.
This menu is actually available only because we are in a grease pencil object now. If you go out of the grease pencil object, even if you're in the 2D animation tab, this menu will disappear. By the way, to go out of your drawing and edit another object, you must switch from draw mode to object mode, and then you can click on the other object. This is because when you draw on Blender, you can click on different objects that are not drawings, but you don't want to quit the draw mode, so that's why Blender keeps you inside the draw mode unless you specify that other you must will disappear. By the way, to go out of your drawing and edit another object, you must switch from draw mode to object mode, and then you can click on the other object. This is because when you draw on Blender, you can click on different objects that are not drawings, but you don't want to quit the draw mode, so that's why Blender keeps you inside the draw mode unless you specify that you want to go out by switching this menu to object mode and then click on another object.
Long time
Also,
no see,
if
my
you
boo.
want to switch from a drawing to another drawing, you must first go to
to
object mode 2,
どこだ?
and then you can click on the other drawing and then switch back to draw mode. The The draw mode is only available if you have selected a
ブ
drawing
ー。
object. Now let's configure the dimensions of our exported animation. If you press on 0 on the numpad, you switch to
Good.
camera view to see a preview of the exported image.
何
So here we see that we have a panoramic
チュナチ
image,
ン。
but in this case we want image out only and click on the auto drawing and then switch back to draw mode. The draw mode is only available if you have selected a drawing object. Now let's configure the dimensions of our exported animation. If you press on 0 on the numpad, you
You
switch
are
to
so
camera
handsome.
view to see a preview of the exported image. So
Lickable.
here we see that we have a panoramic
リ
image.
カブル。
But in this case, we want a square image to put it on our social networks.
カニ
So
さ
you
ん無
can
理だ。
click here on this printer icon and
こっち
change
の
the
方がいいのか。
dimensions to 1920 for both X and Y resolution. And we are going to change the background color of our drawing. So we go to this word icon here and click under background color and change the color. If you don't see your color appearing in the viewport here, it means that you're probably in one of the display modes up there of the viewport, which are wireframe mode, solid mode, or material preview mode. So you just need to click on the last icon here. This one, this color, back color of a drawing. So we go to this word icon here and click under background color and change the color. If you don't see your color appearing in the viewport here, it means that you're probably in one of the display modes up there of the viewport, which are wireframe mode, solid mode, or material preview mode. So you just need to click on the last icon here. This one is the render
はい、
preview mode.
朝。
And now you see that
おはよう。ブエノス。で、
Nice
違
frame.
う。ブエノス。ディアス。いいかな。じゃあ、よかった。そう、はい。should change more this frame. はあ。
the color on the viewport is slightly different than the color that you picked in the right panel. That is because on Blender, the default export colors are
まず
adapted to make a more
中の
photorealistic or
ブロードウェイ
filmic render. But here we are doing a non-realistic drawing, so to change that you go to this little camera
フ
icon
ィルミ
and
ッ
under
ク
the
が
color
ラン
management
サム
section
よ
you
かった。
switch the display mode from filmic to standard, and then you see
スタンダードは
Many second-hand shops.
セカンドハンド。セカンドハンドは、ああ、お。便利なお店か。古道具屋。ああ。ああ。そうだね。古道具屋。
the
Oh,
actual
yeah,
color
that's
that you
so cool.
picked. Okay, that flashy yellow was just for the example, but I'm going to put
Also,
more
Nakano
pale color
feels
for
more
this
Japanese.
tutorial. Yes, you know, in the end, I'm
Less
going to change
tourists.
this to blue, but I will keep this bright pale yellow for now. Let's make little
Hi.
videos now to get familiar with the tool.
Can't
So
understand
here we are in the grease
that
pencil object. Here
feeling.
we are in a draw mode. We go in this panel here that looks like a green spaghetti.
でもそう
And
か。
here
まあ、新宿よりは、そうかもね。中止しないとダメかな。スペイシャ
Less
ス。
crowded.
放送を終了しました。
接続してください。
facial
And it's nearby. Probably a good place to live in.
どうだろう。住んだことないけど。じゃあ、let's live in 中野。I heard 中野 is good to live. So you have correct feeling.
And cheaper than Shinjuku.
再起動しなきゃな。cheaper restaurant price or what って。ちょっと今
I'm
電
going to
話しな
Odaiba
きゃ
today.
な。いってらっしゃい。お台場か。俺は I'm not good って。お台場。without 国際展示場。
Did you get a new PC?
はい。ごって、ニュースクリーンアンドアイ。アップデートだ。OBS ストリーミングソフトウェア。I got 4K 28 inches panel で I fitted window size but still messy
28 inches pog bones.
yeah backbone I have and I have 3 panels 写真撮るかうわ too messy ちょっとな部屋の掃除しないと。 はい、アップローディで。この状態。わあ。この、ワン、ツー、スリー。下に隠れちゃった。で、まだあんで。
Don't put them together.
Put them
Right
together.
next to each other.
Yeah. True. So I need to tidy up my room. 今、すごい、無理やり。This is makeshift situation. I makeshift it so very messy.
I see.
I will correct it.
Can create the layers of your drawing. So click on new layer and double click on the new layer to rename it. Then
Cheater.
create your color palette to go to the material panel in this button here that
What
looks like a
is
sphere
cheater?
with a checker texture. And here just click on new to add a new color and double
2
click
days
to
off
rename
so
it.
people
I
couldn't
usually
redeem
name
it.
my first color line art because this will be all
Redeem.
of the main lines that I'm going to draw.
Redeem いって。To make somebody else less bad.
Redeem
Wow.
channel points.
Redeem. Redeem to make
Indistinct.
Put points into squats.
おお。買い戻す。レスパーって。コンペンセイティ。コンペンセイティ。やる能力がある。埋め合わせ。あと何日だっけ。う
You
わ
have to do the percent of squats.
さplease give me 30,000 point and it has still 2 days.
Down here
Orange
you can
will do
change the color of
30k
the
squats
stroke and
pog
feel better.
bones.
I will show this to
I
you
can
later.
donate
Let's
3k
move this to
more.
black. Now back to the layers. Okay, I'm in the right layer
More.
because I only have one anyway. Let's start with non-animated doodles. I'll show you the animation part later.
分
To
割し
go
ないと
out of this
ディバイ
preview
ド。
frame, I'm just going to rotate the camera slightly And I'm also going to remove the grids and overlays by clicking on this overlay button here. Now that all the settings are done, you can draw here with the pen, and be careful to stay in the same frame in the timeline here below, because if you accidentally move in the timeline with the mouse or by pressing the space button, which is the shortcut to play the animation, and if you try to continue an existing drawing from here, you see all the previous lines disappearing suddenly. This is because Blender creates automatically new keyframes when you move in the time and draw. So this feature is for
Donate limit. I don't know why you can't pay.
Japanese man learns Blender from French person speaking English.
Pay limit. そう。なんで、Spanish people mentioned about that weirdness.
The animation. If you
In
accidentally created new keyframes, just go back to your first keyframe and select the other ones by dragging here and press X to delete. Let's draw this little fruit. Here you can change the width of your brush, and this button toggles on and off the pen pressure. On the next input you can change the strength of your pen. The strength is actually the opacity of your brush, and you can also toggle on and off the pressure for this part. In the advanced drop-down, you can configure the way how the software recalls your strokes. It will depend on your computer settings, but in my case it seems better when I set the input samples to 1 and the active smooth to
あれが出てないか。翻訳テスト来てる。I need to abstain alcohol. ウイスキーダメだわ。
0.3. Let's put the width to around 25 pixels and continue our to-do. I've drawn this little fruit here. Now if I rotate the camera and then draw something else here, you see that the two drawings are oriented in different directions. To understand what happened, we are going to reveal the invisible canvas behind the drawing. I'm gonna activate the overlays here, but with more options in this drop-down, I checked the canvas option. Now we see a new grid on the center. This is the canvas. It's the invisible plane on which we were actually drawing. I'll just remove the floor from the overlay options so we can see the canvas better. Now the canvas is in the center of the scene and is facing us. Its position and orientation are actually ruled by the two drop-downs up there. The settings you should have per default are origin for the position and view for the orientation. When you have this setting, the canvas will always stay at the global center of the scene and will always face the view, which means yourself. If you draw little arrows in the corner of the canvas and then rotate the camera, you see the arrows stay exactly where the canvas was oriented before, while the canvas is rotating with us. If we draw again now, our new lines are now aligned with the new current view. I'm gonna change the orientation rule to front, and the canvas rotates to a front, obviously. Here, if I draw a horizon, you notice that I can go outside the grid. So although you just see this little grid here for the canvas, Actually, it's stretching to the whole space on the sides and the top and the bottom. So now you understand how this works. If you switch this to top, the grid faces the top, so you can draw something on the floor like this road, for example. And same rule for the side orientation, you can draw something standing over the floor. Okay, it looks nice, but what if you want to draw the same thing but not from the center of the scene now? Well, that's when we need the 3D cursor. In the first drop down here, let's switch the origin option to 3D cursor. If you don't see the 3D cursor on the screen, you have to activate it in the overlays. So up there, check that the overlays are activated, of course, and then in the drop down, check the 3D cursor option. Now you can shift right click in the scene to move the 3D cursor, and the canvas moves with it. You can now draw like we did before, but from different places. By the way, you see that to move the cursor, I'm clicking randomly in my perspective view, and I assume the cursor is moving from left to right, but I have no idea of the distance from my view to the cursor. Maybe it's not even aligned to the floor, so a better way to move the cursor with more precision is to not be in perspective view. If I press numpad 1, my view is switched to the front and all the perspective have disappeared. So now, in this view, I can see all the objects nicely aligned from the front in an orthographic space, and I see my 3D cursor between the objects. I can precisely move the cursor with shift right clicking on the screen, and I can place it precisely, for example, in the center of the tree here. And remember to navigate on the orthographic view without rotating the camera. You must hold Alt plus Shift and drag on the screen with your pen. If you use Alt plus the pen, you rotate the camera so you get out of the orthographic view. You have to press numpad 1 again to go back here. When I have perspective from different places. By the way, you see that to move the cursor, I'm clicking run.
Medium White Star News Status. Closed book Learning English.
think darkness is your ally. You merely adopted the dark. I was born in it.
The visual effects industry is in a crisis. This summer, a wave of stories emerged that paint a picture of a looming disaster for visual effects houses across the world and a punishing, vicious cycle for the artists. Within, one marked by brutal working hours, unreasonable deadlines, and rampant burnout. It's not at all uncommon for visual effects artists to pull numerous 100-hour work weeks in the months leading up to a movie's release date. One artist interviewed by Vulture said that a light week on a recent Marvel movie still totaled some 64 hours. And that's to say nothing of the nervous breakdowns that have come from overwork, or the allegations of bullying, or the insane studio demands on blockbusters that undergo massive reshoots and retooling, or the fact
Buckle up, everyone, because I just learned something weird and now you all need to know it too. I was on a call the other day with a woman named Emily Fairfax, and she knows a lot about beavers. Yes, beavers. And at one point, she just casually mentions
a weird period of beaver relocation in the 40s where we dropped them out of airplanes.
I'm sorry, what?
There's this absolutely absurd video, you can find it on YouTube, from Idaho.
I'm sorry, what?
There's this absolutely absurd video.
Absurd.
You can find it on YouTube. From Idaho Fish and Game.
Now into the air and down they swing. The box opens and a most unusual and novel trip ends for Mr. Beaver.
Okay, the method is super questionable, but the Idaho Department of Fish and Game did this to relocate 76 beavers away from humans and into a remote location where there were no roads. Because beavers build dams, structures that completely alter the landscape. But now researchers have found that beavers and their dams do so much more than flood a forest. As the planet continues to warm, they might also be vital in cooling parts of it down.
So when beavers move into a stream, their very first order of business is to build that dam, to start making a little bit of safe habitat for themselves.
They start with some logs or stones to secure the structure. After that, they'll keep piling sticks, stones, and mud over and over again, until water starts to pool behind it. As flowing water pushes against the dam, it begins to carve out a deep pool, which is great for the beaver, because on land...
They're pretty unfortunately awkward, but once they get into the water...
Awkward.
That's where they really shine and excel.
But it's also ideal for other species, because deeper water tends to be much cooler than water at the surface.
So if you're a fish, and it's a really hot day, you can go down into one of these deep pools and just hunker down at the bottom where the water is coolest and has the least sunlight affecting it.
The dam also forces circulation. As water hits the dam, some of it is forced into the soil where it mixes with cold groundwater before resurfacing. As a result, one study found that water near beaver dams is up to 4 degrees Fahrenheit cooler than water elsewhere. This comfortable little pond is the first defense against predators. But beavers will also dig out canals into the surrounding land, which function as a small highway system for them. All this tampering with the stream spreads the water around the area. As that water evaporates, the water vapor chills the air.
So at one of my sites in central
As that water evaporates, the water vapor chills the air.
So at one of my sites in Central California, I went to visit on a particularly hot day. It was 107 Fahrenheit. And then I get into the complex and I hold up the temperature probe. I'm like, wow, it's 91. Like, we lost like almost 15 degrees of air temperature just going into this beaver complex.
The area becomes a wetland ecosystem, and at first glance, it's a total mess with branches, plants, and water everywhere. And that's a good thing.
A river or riverscape should be very complex, very messy, and it's that complexity that makes them so resilient to climate change and all sorts of other disturbances.
And that resiliency is increasingly important.
In the summer of 2022, heat waves and fires plagued parts of Europe and the US.
Heat waves. Fires. Plagued.
As the climate crisis worsens, we can expect these events to increase. Beavers, it turns out, might be able to help, because these wetland ecosystems are especially important in areas prone to fire or drought. Dams slow water down and allow it to seep deep into the earth, which
Seep.
provides a source of groundwater for humans. It also keeps the surrounding land wet, and wetter land is less likely to burn. This is an image from Idaho in 2018 when 65,000 acres were scorched by wildfire. This green patch in the middle is a wetland created by a beaver dam. Emily and a colleague studied the effects of this in 2020 and found repeated evidence that beaver dams create fire breaks, providing a safe place for animals to go when wildfires break out.
That was the first study in the scientific literature that said beaver ponds are too wet to burn in many cases.
Beavers have had bad PR. They're often considered annoying pests because wetland creation is so messy. When a dam is built in the wrong place, it can flood roadways or homes. And previously, the solution was extermination. But that seems to be changing. California, for example, just passed a bill that requires state-sponsored beaver relocation. Don't worry, they won't be dropping them out of planes. What we're learning is that beavers do some of the best engineering work for climate resiliency. We just have to let them.
We've got to let go of a little bit of control, especially once a beaver starts building. Like, what was a pretty cute little stream becomes this super wild, messy wetland. Like, that's good. Remember that that is good. We want it to be messy.
In the summer of 1910, the western United States ignited. A perfect blend of hot, dry weather and hurricane-force winds fed the blazes, eventually resulting in a terrifying firestorm. In just 2 days, 3 million acres burned, full towns were turned to ash, and nearly 90 people died. Its devastation was so dramatic that it shaped U.S. forest policy for years to come, especially for one new agency. After the 1910 blaze, the U.S. Forest Service primarily focused on stopping fires. and at first, they were really effective. For decades, most accidental and natural forest fires were stopped as quickly as they began. But today we're facing this.
Thousands of firefighters still battling dozens of fires in the West.
More than 85,000 acres burned.
The worst wildfire season in state history.
Scientists are beginning to understand that decades of fire suppression has created dense forests that are ready to ignite in catastrophic ways. One proposed solution dates back hundreds of years: burning parts of our forest on purpose.
So remember, only you can prevent forest fires.
In 1944, the U.S. Forest Service introduced Smokey the Bear. The goal was to educate the public on the dangers of forest fires. But even before that famous campaign, the federal government had put thousands of men to work building fire towers and suppressing burns. In 1935, the Forest Service even established the 10 a.m. policy, a rule that states all fires should be suppressed by 10 a.m. the day after they're reported. This mentality that all fire is bad drove an entire generation's understanding of what fire means to a forest.
A tragedy that happens year after year in our great American forest areas.
But by the 1960s, scientists realized that narrative isn't entirely accurate.
For most of the globe, and particularly the forests in the western U.S., they actually evolved with fire.
Tree rings, soil samples, and charcoal records all show a history of fire, likely started by lightning strikes and other natural phenomena. And that history shows that fire isn't always a destructive force, but an important part of forest ecology.
Fire plays this really important role where it is essentially removing a lot of the older, less productive material from the landscape and is creating pockets and patches of different ages of vegetation. That diversity of ages also produces a diversity of species.
In many places, fire works as a reset button for the forest. It clears out dead brush and older materials and makes space for new growth. For some species, fire is even vital for reproduction. For example, low-burning fires dry out sequoia tree cones enough for them to open up and drop seeds. At the same time, the fire clears the ground to expose fresh, nutrient-rich soil, which creates ideal conditions for the seeds to germinate. But aside from the ecological benefits, fires also help a forest become more resistant to high-severity burns later on. Low-burning fires clear the forest floor and lower branches from the trees. Then, if a more intense fire moves through the same area, it's slowed down by a lack of fuel.
So when you get those type of patches all over the place, it becomes difficult for fire to move through that landscape again anytime soon.
But decades of suppression have led to a buildup of dry, dead materials in our forests. So we're long past that point of just letting all fires burn.
We've got a forest that has not seen fire, but that it evolved with fire. And so there's all of this buildup in the forest of extra fuel. And it is climate change exacerbating those extreme conditions.
There's just no simple reset button for a century of suppression, or a changing climate. So in order to better adapt to a hotter, drier future, some are turning to a centuries-old practice. Indigenous people have long understood the value of fire, and for millennia before colonization, would burn sections of the forest on purpose.
We have a history of our men burning our hunting grounds. Women will burn to restore their food gathering sites. So, burning is just a key tool that we use as Indigenous people to keep our environment healthy.
But colonists began placing strict laws against burning as early as 1850, criminalizing the long-held practice. After the 1910 blaze, legislation against all burning only became more strict.
Legislation.
Indigenous people could be shot for burning.
And now, we're looking to them to lead the way. Prescribed or controlled burns draw on those cultural Indigenous practices.
Most people think, these guys just go out and burn whenever they want to. God, I wish it was that easy. These guys just go out and burn whenever they want to. God, I wish it was that easy. We go before the counties to get their permits. We go before our tribal councils to get their permission and their permits to burn on tribal land. We go before the tribal air quality. We go before the county's air quality. And then I work with NOAA to predict my weather throughout that week while we're burning. Once we have ignition, everybody falls into the place they need to be in. They have their tools ready. They have their radios on. We all know where everybody is at every moment.
The fire started in these controlled burns moves slowly across the forest floor and clears out the buildup of dead material. If the wind shifts or the fire gets too high, it's quickly contained and put out by the trained crew.
You know, there's not one piece of our day that isn't choreographed.
In 2020 and 2021, lawmakers introduced bills to increase the use of controlled burning nationwide. It's a start, but it won't be enough on its own. Recent data shows that wildfires are only getting larger and more destructive year after year. Campaigns like Smokey the Bear weren't wrong to teach us to be careful with fire. Today, research shows that human carelessness, like loose cigarettes, campfires, and sometimes even arson, cause over 85% of disastrous wildfires. More controlled burns could help minimize those risks. But we also need to recognize that fire is a natural part of the landscape we're now living in, and climate change is only going to make it worse. That means building resilient communities and passing legislation that requires fire-resistant materials in high-risk areas, and truly educating the public on fire safety.
I saw Smokey Bear as a child and kind of thought, that was going to go in the wrong direction. But here I am as an adult realizing that Smokey really frightened an entire population of people into realizing if we do this, something's going to happen to us. We're going to lose our homes. We're going to, destroy our environment. Well, by not doing it, we're losing our homes and our environment is being destroyed. The Forest Service has a program called the Roots and Shoots program where they burn bear grass for our basket weavers. Bear grass is what gives us the white in our baskets, and it's a serotinous plant. If it's not burned, it's not usable.
Serotinous.
Our basket gathering sites are on a rotation. So every 3 to 5 years, those are burned. Because for the first 3 years, you can continue to gather hazel sticks in a certain site where it's been burned. Other plants don't require fire that often.
Okay. All right, so hello everyone and welcome to the talk about the Blender Studio pipeline. So some quick words about me before we start, so you know who's talking here. I'm Paul. I'm currently still finishing my diploma as a technical director at Animationsinstitut in Germany. And in between, I was working here in Amsterdam at the Blender Studio as a year as a pipeline GD. And in the next 20 minutes, I'm going to give you some insights on how the pipeline at the Blender Studio works. So what might set this pipeline apart from others is that Blender is literally used for almost everything. And this is actually quite an unusual scenario because in a normal pipeline, you often work with many different DCCs, and a big part of the pipeline's job is to manage the data flow between those. But at the Blender Studio, we don't have that requirement. And what I will show you in this talk is how we can actually take advantage of that. So how we can take advantage of how Blender works at its core, how it manages data, and design our pipeline around that. So I'm going to start talking about the editorial workflow at the Blender Studio. Blender has a built-in editorial environment called Video Sequence Editor, and this is very unique amongst other DCCs and opens up very interesting opportunities. And we then will hop over to our review workflow. I'm going to show you a fun little add-on that has helped us to judge sequences as a whole. After that, I'm going to introduce you to Blender application templates by showing you an example that turns Blender in a cross-platform media viewer that also has some basic review tools. And last but not least, we will have a look at the new iteration of the Blender Studio's asset pipeline that is really designed around Blender. And I will talk about the system and sort of explain how it enables artists to work on the same asset at the same time. So, as I already mentioned, Blender has a built-in editorial environment called the Video Sequence Editor. I'm sure everyone knows it and loves it in this room. And it has a very wide range of editing tools, and it was actually used to edit all past Blender Open movies. And like all other parts, the Video Sequence Editor also has an extensive Python API. And this highly scriptable editorial environment can be very well integrated in a pipeline. For Sprite Fright, the Blender Studio also switched from their in-house production management suite Attract to Kitsu. And for the Blender Studio, Kitsu is really like the hub in which all information about the production can be found. And the shot list on Kitsu is basically the edit in a spreadsheet format. And it's very important that Kitsu is always up to date and synchronized with the edit that we do in Blender. Otherwise, you end up with mismatching data, which opens up the space for errors further down the pipeline. But imagine our editor has to adjust frame ranges on Kitsu every time he trims a shot or it gets shifted. So what we are essentially looking for is a system that sort of serves as a bridge between the editorial department and Kitsu to exchange data. And that's what we developed the Blender Kitsu add-on for. So with the add-on, you can log in to Kitsu from within Blender. You can then go ahead and link a movie strip to a shot on Kitsu. And once a movie strip is linked to a Kitsu shot, we can exchange data between the two. For example, by updating frame ranges, thumbnails, shot name, and other data without even having to leave Blender. And the great thing is that the whole system is selection sensitive. So you can update frame ranges and thumbnails of all shots in your edit with just a click of a button. And one important aspect to really get right is frame ranges. You don't want animators to animate less than they should, or worse, animate more than they should. And everyone who already transferred frame ranges by hand knows just how quickly you can switch up numbers. So this add-on just helped a great deal to automate this process. And when artists then worked on shot files, we actually had tools in place that would validate the current frame range with Kitsu, and you get like a warning and you can update your frame range. So in this case, we took advantage of Blender's sequence editor and made managing shot metadata a whole lot easier by doing it directly with the raw data of the edit. Another fun little add-on I want to share is the contact sheet add-on. This project came to life because we wanted to have a quick way to get an overview of a whole sequence. And it's especially useful for the lighting and comp department to validate whether the shots in a sequence look consistent and harmonious. So with another add-on, you can quickly load all shots of a whole sequence, and the contact sheet add-on then just takes a continuous sequence of the topmost movie strips and assembles them in this grid view. And you can also just manually select the movie strips you want to have in your contact sheet. And everything it's doing really is it's using the video sequence editor's Python API and a little math to scale and transform the movie clips. So this is just another small example what you can do with the video sequence editor and its Python API. All right, the next project is a little bit more than just an add-on. The media viewer is actually an application template that turns Blender in a cross-platform video, image, and text viewer. With an application template, you can actually ship your own key maps, startup files, user preferences, and you can even define template-specific add-ons and modify parts of the Blender user interface all in one bundle. And the great thing is that you can easily switch between these templates without having to override your own personal configuration or requiring a separate Blender installation. That means people can actually build their own applications on top of Blender that can be easily distributed. And by the way, you maybe heard it at the keynote of Ton, that can be easily distributed.
Distributed.
And by the way, you maybe heard it at the keynote of Ton, the project application templates is amongst the strategic development goals of the Blender project this year. And the Blender Media Viewer was actually an attempt to see how far we can push the system. And it showed some shortcomings, and hopefully at the end of the year, we will get some exciting updates. So let's have a look at what the Media Viewer can do. So, as I said, the Media Viewer offers the solution to have a player that can seamlessly browse media files with the arrow keys on your keyboard, no matter if they are video, image, or image sequences. And this application template reduces the Blender UI to a bare minimum by removing all elements that are not needed. And it ships with its own key map that adds useful shortcut to actually make it usable without a mouse. And in the background, it actually switches dynamically between the Blender image editor, sequence editor, and text editor, depending on what type of file was selected. And it even has some basic review tools, so you can annotate your media and also export them with just a click of a button. And the really exciting point here is that you can basically use Blender to build your own applications. So you can make use of all the open infrastructure of Blender that was built over years, like its ability to read and display all kinds of codecs, like multi-layer XR support, and you just wrap it in an application template that serves a specific purpose for you. All right. The last section will be about the asset pipeline of the Blender Studio. The foundation of the asset pipeline was established during the Settlers project, and it was further iterated on during the production of Sprite Fright. And the asset pipeline is really designed around two core concepts. First, we want to take advantage of the way Blender stores data. And second, we want to enable artists to work in parallel without having to wait for output of another task. And the second concept is kind of the result of the first, so let's jump a bit more into detail. So in order to understand how the asset pipeline is built, it's worth taking a quick look on how a blend file is actually structured. You can think of a blend file a little like a database. It is composed of data blocks, each storing different kinds of data, and these data blocks can reference each other, creating some sort of a hierarchy. And those data blocks can also be appended or linked in from other blend files, as I'm sure most of you know. And in the asset pipeline, we take advantage of this principle. So,
Concha concha.
So there's a very common question that I hear a lot when it comes to Blender, and that is, can you do X in Blender? And my response has evolved to, well, you can, but why? Because usually what they want is something very, very specific. Take storyboarding, for example. Can you do it? Well, let's have a look. Right? Can you storyboard in Blender? Well, first we have to ask ourselves, what is a storyboard? And I like to define it as a
Getting the brain bigger while learning Blender?
Or I couldn't show my voice. はい。喉。上の違う。Bonsoir. I am learning English during learning Blender.
Sequential art that visually conveys the impact of a written scene. You take a script and you break that down into shots and frames and scenes and so on, as you can see here. A project that I was working on last year was a short film entitled Eat Sheep for CD Cookie.
Let's
do the next one. Yeah, right. And it essentially breaks down. A scene will break down into shots, and shots break down into frames. As soon as you break continuity, that is a new shot, and a sequence of shots make up the overall scene. And so if we take a look at that script up there, there's just a portion of this. We've got some rabbits. Apparently they're frolicking, but I just had them eating in grass, and then they look up. And then this monster, Melvin, jumps out from the bushes and scares the, I don't think it's a bleep button, so I can't see, out of them. But what you storyboard in is not really important. I mean, for decades, people have been storyboarding on paper, and it's basically how you tell the story, how you visualize what's on the script to give to a department that is going to put that on a screen. And so here's some examples. I mean, Disney, is that, I forgot what that one was. I think it was Alien, yes, and Star Wars. All this stuff was just done with markers on paper, right?
It is
One of my
interesting
favorite stories is The Art of June. Has anyone seen Jodorowsky's June? Not the actual, but it's a documentary. Yeah. And Jean-Gerard Mobius, who passed away a few years ago, he illustrated the entire storyboard, and I believe this could be apocryphal. There's only 2 copies of that in existence. So, hey, look, my birthday's coming up next year. If anyone wants to pitch in. But no, he scribbled really, really quickly, and he storyboarded the entire film. Just like that, just pencil and paper. But of course, in today's modern age, we're used to seeing storyboarding software, and there's a ton of packages, but they're generally designed to do one task, and that is storyboarding. And one of the most popular ones happens to be Storyboard Pro by Toon Boom. But
ストーリーボードプロ。こんなのがある。 何ができるんだろう。なるほど。動画にできるんだ。購入がいくらだっていうの。サブスクが月8000円。うわ、バカ高え。15万。アホかよ。めっちゃ高かった。Needless to.
It will set you back about that much on a yearly subscription. So the question remains, can you storyboard in Blender? Well, first we have to ask ourselves some questions about the software. What task is it that you need your software to accomplish? And are the tools available in something like Blender an efficient option? I mean, yes, we can say that Blender's got things like
Big money.
certain
めちゃめちゃ
that we
高
know
い。
work. And so when I'm
はい。
storyboarding,
い
I know I need to sketch out some ideas very,
イ
very
グ
quickly.
イ
And we
ン
have the grease pencil for that.
ホブゲ
We
ームズ。
need to be able to organize the scenes and the shots and the frames. And for that, we can, on a timeline, set out markers and bind cameras to markers so we can get automatic camera switching. More often than not, the lines are blurred between storyboarding and animatics. Everyone is now expecting some sort of an animatic to come out of the process, right? And for that, we have the VSE, in which we can edit. So Blender does have the tools, but how do you actually storyboard in Blender? So I'm going to show you 3 ways that it can be done. So this is one shot, and you can see here that grease pencil, these are several grease pencil objects on the left here. I've got a sky layer, I've got a background, I've got a character, I've got some foreground, and I've got a camera that is animatable. Now, the way grease pencil is set up, it's in real world units, right? So that's why it's a really good animation tool. The camera, you can do depth of field effects, you can move around the scene as you would in human-sized scale. And so drawing in grease pencil, you can get all of that drafted before you replace that with 3D objects or your characters or whatnot. And of course, that's what it looks like through the camera. All of those things are composed in a shot. Now, hopefully this will work. Let's see, do I have to press the button again? Let's see now. No? Okay, let's go back. I don't think this is going to play, but it shows you the breakdown, right? So this is what we're seeing through the camera, and I don't actually have to resort to interpretive dance, thank goodness, but you can imagine that this camera can be animated to get the effect of what you have to see. So yeah, unfortunately that will not play the video. Now what this slide is showing is that in Blender, just vanilla, no add-ons, no nothing, we can set up cameras wherever we want, and we can point them at a grease pencil object, and we can camera switch so that when the animation of one grease pencil object is finished, it moves on to the next camera, that shot is rendered, and so on. Now, if this would play, it would show you, so unfortunately it won't. Up the top, you can see where the shots are marked, right? Those are markers on a timeline, and we've got shot 1, shot 2, shot 3. Now, this is shot 1, obviously, and as that animates, then it switches to shot 2, and then it switches to shot 3 as the timeline progresses, which it's not going to play for us. But you can go beyond that, even in Blender as it stands. One thing you can do is add effects and modifiers. So let's, for example, say we want to do a depth of field effect where the camera is pulling back. and you want to get a sort of a blurry effect, as you can sort of see in the top there. Well, you can add a couple of modifiers like the blur modifier, and because you can just tick a box saying depth of field, if you've got the depth of field set up on your camera with a really nice short focal length, I believe the word is, could be wrong, you can animate that. So as you pull the camera back, you can change where the focal plane is, so you can pull focus from the wrangler there with the that horrible looking weapon and the monster in the foreground. But then what happens is you have to render everything out, and if you want to use the VSE, you have to bring those slides in, throw them on the VSE, and edit them like this, okay? Which I think we've all done before. So if this could play, you can see all the files, and they're dragged on here, and then as you play the animation, you can edit the timing of them. Now that's how you could just do it in Blender right now. There are a couple of, well, there's one add-on that I used extensively, and it's called Storyboard by Ed White. You can download this for free, and the way it works is it basically automates everything that I just said. It will set up cameras for you, it will set up a grease pencil plane in front of every camera and a background plate, and you can dynamically add cameras as you need them. And the way I worked is that each camera would hold a shot, and then I could animate a number of frames within that shot before the marker would go onto the next camera, and so on. But you still got the same problem that once you render everything out, you've got to put them on a timeline like this. Now, the storyboard add-on works really, really simply. Now, I'll see if this, yes, okay, I'm just going to bring this up because it's all color-coded for you. This is what it looks like.
ストーリーボードアートはちょっとレンダーのレンダーストーリーボードアート、これか。
White. And this is a quick overview of how to get started working with my storyboard and animatic add-on for Blender. It will work with Blender's 2.83 and later. It is designed to work in the front view like in 2D animation mode. If you start in 3D mode, you will need to change the view to the front view by pressing 1 on the numeric keyboard. You can leave the default cube, and in fact the first panel will actually be about that size. So if you pan your screen to make this cube in the upper left, that will be the start of your panels.
99ステアおはようございます。
Go to the edit menu, preferences, add-ons, and click the install tab. Locate your zip file, select it, install add-on.
何ができるのか
When you do that, to get started, you'll need to click the Create Storyboard button first. When you do that, a new panel will pop open showing horizontal vertical panels with the total, the time frame that you want each panel to jump in time, this is in frames, and it actually will delete the default cube for you after, so you don't have to worry about that. And you can actually pick a name for each of the different shots. If you change the size or type in some number, it'll give you a preview. And if you change the size, you won't see a preview now, but it will happen after you click the OK button. So what happens is panels are created with corresponding cameras for each panel. In addition, the cameras are set to markers, which are actually bound to markers at the bottom in the timeline. And as you move the time cursor, each camera will switch to the next shot over time. And if you play, you'll see each camera changing.
カメラの違いが
If I change to a user perspective view, we can zoom out and we can see each of the panels and each of the orthographic cameras. The cameras are orthographic so that each pixel maps to each pixel on the camera. They're not a perspective camera, so you won't actually see any of the panels if the camera moves in or out of the y-axis. In the interface, you can select different cameras by pressing a button on this interface, and it will activate that camera as a view. To jump into that camera's view, you can toggle the camera view with this button here, or the shortcut 0 on the numeric.
パネルがあって、それに
When you're in this view, you can see that as I change
カメラのフォーカスが合うっ
images,
て
the
だけ
camera is changing to view that whole view. And you can zoom in and out as much as you want.
どうなんだ
One of the best views is to go into the viewpoint front view, like it was at the beginning, and you can zoom in and out of this. In addition to seeing each camera in its view, there is also a storyboard camera that you can use to render out the panels. The active camera is marked by a highlighted icon in this interface, and it's also marked in the camera navigation section here. It shows which camera you're using, and also in the outliner you can see which is the actual camera. Now you can pick cameras with this green icon here to change to different views. To start drawing with the grease pencil, you can actually click the draw button at the top. That will actually create a grease pencil object, and it will create layers depending on your preferences, and it will default to starting with either a character rough or a background rough. So if you want to work on backgrounds first, you could do that, or if you want to start with characters, you could do that. It will also create materials depending what you have set in your preferences. And with the fast draw, as you change shots, it will keep creating objects for each panel. So when you are in draw mode, it'll show it here, and you can pick your tool up in this window here. I'll change to a pen, so I can mark this like frame 1. If I go to the next panel, I now have a new grease pencil object using the same layer. I'll mark a 2 here, so that when I go back to the previous shot, you can see now I'm on frame 1, or shot 1, and camera has changed, and the object has changed automatically. So if I go to next, you can see we're using the next grease pencil object for that. The reason for that is you can move this object around. So if I go to select mode, which is the same as object mode, you could actually press the G key and move this object and go back to your previous shot, and you can see you haven't moved
わざわざこれ
So each shot has an independent object.
ブレンダーのグリー
Jump
ス
out of
ペンシルでやる理由は
You can see our objects here. So you can turn off these cameras with this here, and you get a much cleaner view. There are some quick navigation tools. If you select the select button, go back out into your overview, I'll pick shot 6 here and do a jump to shot. And now we're working on shot 6. So I'll zoom in here, click draw, I'll mark this with a 6. And if I select next, since we only have 6 panels, with fast draw, next will create a new panel, and you'll be in draw mode. So I'll mark this, we'll jump out, and we'll see we now have a new panel. Use the hand or do shift and middle mouse button to change your view. and you can see you have a new shot added here. So working in the top part of the interface, you will normally be working on frame 1, and this is so you can draw each of your grease pencil objects and be able to render them with a storyboard camera. As you have your panels created, then you can come into the animatics section and then adjust timing of your shots. That's why you have a little time icon here. And with this, you can actually use the navigation here, but this will be using time. So as I select next in this panel, we'll move the time cursor to shot 2, and if I activate this, we'll also select cursors with this little checkbox here, which is a little bit easier than trying to select
You will get a generated grease pencil object with some layers already made, and it works. Usually you break it down. There's background, there's character, right? So you've got a rough, you've got a clean. And you've got that for both background and character, and you've got some materials that you can set up, and you can customize some, add some extra ones, so that every grease pencil object that gets generated for a shot is already set up like this, and it's really, really handy. When you finally generate it, you can tell it how many shots to have first, and it does this, and you can sort of see down the side there, all the shots are all cameras that are automatically lined up and bound to markers along a timeline. It's very, very useful. Now, this is really good if you're going to just draw 2D drawings, okay? But of course, we sometimes want to go beyond that. And that's where I had a bit of a play around with the Story Pencil plugin that is currently in 3.4 alpha, and I had a talk to Daniel Martinez-Lara earlier, who showed me a couple of things, and unfortunately the video won't play. But what this does is it takes a different approach. You download 3.4, you go to your testing, you activate the Hey everyone, Paul here. I'm just jumping into my own YouTube channel briefly.
この人だ。同じ人だった。
Just to show you this really cool little add-on that's coming up in Blender.
なぜリンクを貼ってくれない？
The add-on is called Story Pencil, and it's going to facilitate the process of storyboarding in Blender. It's still in development, and so that's why they're still making it an add-on. Blah, blah, blah. There's a whole story behind that. But I did manage to get it working, and I just wanted to demystify it a little bit.
Demystify it.
I did manage to get it working. And
Demystify.
わかりやすくする。Demystify.
To demystify it a little bit for you if you wanted to test it out yourself. So in 3.4 alpha that I just downloaded, it's already there in your preferences list for add-ons. You got to
ダウンロード。同じことやるか。
the plugin, as you do, and then you want to set up a storyboard sequence from the get-go, right? So you open up, say, like a 2D animation preset. It'll be automatically in draw mode, and that's where this menu item is. And just to see how it worked, I actually took all the assets from the previous storyboard that you saw and brought them into a fresh 3.4 alpha project, scene by scene, so that I could build it up and see if I could work it. And what we're seeing here is on the my left, your right, it's confusing, is a timeline where I've put each of these shots, right? Each strip is a scene, and we all know how scenes operate. The way this plugin operates is that it can switch between VSE and the 2D animation workspace. Each shot can carry whatever assets you need, and not just grease pencil ones. So once you're done with, say, a shot like this, and you want to bring in 3D objects, you've already done the edit for the animatic. You just swap them out. You get your asset browser, you drag and drop in your assets. That shot is automatically updated on the VSE, right? It's a very efficient way of working, which the 2D version is not so good at handling because it won't see 3D objects just restricted to that one shot. Whereas this, because it's a separate scene, everything in that scene is contained that way. Now, funnily enough, I did this all on the plane on the way over here, and even though it was a 21-hour flight, it didn't take me 21 hours to do. It was actually a very pleasant, easy experience to do on a crappy MacBook Pro that was running out of battery, so I didn't have a lot of time. And if I could play it, I would. That's what it's looking like. And so the answer to that question, can you do X, and in this case X is storyboarding, in Blender, it turns from, well, you can, but why, to, how would you do that, to finally the answer is, well, yes, you can. So look, that's my presentation without some animations, unfortunately. My name's Paul, I'm with this CG Cookie. We've got to stand up in the market, and if you have any questions about it, I do have these demo files. You can come up to me and I'll show you on my little laptop, and I can actually play through them for you. So thank you very much for your time.
飛ばしたったよ、重要なところ。
Go over to testing, and I'm just going to go story, and there it is. Sequencer, story pencil.
ストーリーペンシルでテスティングか。出てこないです。シークエンス、ストーリーペンシル。
Storyboard tools. So
出てこない。もしかして、3.4 にならないと使えないのか。
So you just enable that, and this is how it works. I've opened up a fresh 2D animation startup file. So everything is default here. It will be automatically in draw mode, so we go to our draw menu, and at the bottom there is this setup storyboard session option. We click on that and it flips over to the video editing workspace. This has just automated everything ready for you to storyboard. What's it done? Well, it's created this strip, which is a scene in which you're editing in. And it's created a couple of other scenes. It's got a base scene and an edit scene, but you don't have to worry about that. That's all under the hood type stuff. You also have this little tab here that says story pencil for when we have to relabel things with scenes or automate some processes like name prefix or suffix, that sort of thing. But we'll just leave it on strip for now so that I can show you how this works. Alright, so with this scene strip selected, I can hit edit and it will switch workplace. There is an option, if you prefer, to open that workspace as a new window. I don't really see the point because because it's all in the same file. So I'm going to leave that off, and I hit edit. It switches back to 2D animation, and as you can see, we're looking through the camera. Now everything has got a 0.001 because this scene has duplicated everything from the base scene. And we can proceed to draw something. So I'm going to draw a little character here, right? Go. Blip. Hi. Right. There he is saying hi. And then you go back to the VSC. Now I can just go here to an arbitrary number of frames. And now if I'm going to do an... Now I can just...
Arbitrary.
Arbitrary.
Go here to an arbitrary number of frames, and now if I'm going to do a new sequence, I'm going to hit new, and I can call this shot 2, and I edit shot 2. So now this should have a new stroke object on there, and what I want to do is I want to so let's reset all my brushes. I want to go back to ink pen, and I'm going to go and then you just go back to VSC. Now because we've got 2 clips, this means that these are independently manipulatable. They've got their own grease pencil object on those scenes. Yes, it creates scenes as we go, and so that's how it works with the VSC rather than grease pencil. And each of those scenes have got its own properties and objects and whatnot. So let's say that we wanted to edit this scene over here. Let's go to edit, and we go, let's say, to frame 20, and we wanted to add another keyframe on this. So maybe it's an in-between where he's just thinking about leaving. So we're going to, you can see the onion skinning here, and he looks off to the side, thinking about it. We can go back to the VSE, but we put this on frame 20, but we want it to be a little bit sooner. Well, let's just edit. Go split clip. Let's go up to where we're at, split the clip again, and we can select this. We can take that away, and we can edit in that scene. And now those frames, right, are easily editable within the VSC before we jump into shot 2, which is another sequence. I really like this method. I think it's very useful. It organizes things already for me. Each scene can be a shot or a sequence. So you can change sets or you can change characters or whatever. But I haven't overly used this yet, but I can definitely see the potential and how it's going to be a very powerful tool for storyboarding. So it's worth checking out. I just wanted to demystify it a little bit because mainly the documentation isn't quite there yet, and all the demos are just like, hey, check out this new feature and how wonderful it is. Yes, you'll be able to storyboard. And I'm just like, great, I don't get it. So I hope this demystifies it a little bit for you. All right, see you later, guys.
Demystifies.
So I hope this demystifies it a little bit for you.
Demystifies.
Demystify. ミスティがミステリーで。
So I hope this demystifies.
Visualize you. この人のチャンネルは何言ってる？そもそもブレンダーの 3.4 を入れないとできないっぽいな。ブレンダーの 3.4 がもう出てる。アップロード。もう一回やらなきゃいけないのかな。アップデートじゃなくて、 1時間かかるって。ああ。3.4になったらこの機能が備わってるから、やる。この人は何をやってる人？ぬかがある。何ぬかがあるって。マッピング必要なんだ。
Hey everyone, today I'm going to be taking a look at the toolbox. Now, if you're jumping in and out of many applications during your workday, the toolbox is supposed to make your life a lot easier. I got to play with this model, the Toolbox Neo, for a couple of weeks to see if it could keep up with my own day-to-day workflow. So if you want to see how things went, keep watching. Okay, so what do we got? It comes nicely packaged. Okay, USB cable. And the toolbox itself. So, yeah, look, it's a nice, small, compact device. USB-C connecting, a lot of buttons and dials that we can assign various shortcuts to. And let's just have a quick look at the quick start guide. It says, please visit Alt. We've got presets here for Photoshop. Let's see what we've got here. Ah, look, it will speed play, and the reverse is on the using down the timeline, up the timeline. That doesn't work. Signed key was the. Now nothing is set for now, so
satellite antenna ninja keys.
Go into Blender and let's say we
raid the channel with 6 viewers.
はい、忍者キー。
Zero will take us out.
3はい、で。
5 will toggle us between isometric and perspective.
元気ですか?
4 will rotate
元
left
気
and right.
で
8
す。
and 2 will rotate up and down. 1 is front view, 3 is side view, 7
Oh, Blender.
is...
Yes, I'm learning
Let's figure this
Blender.
out logically. What have we got on our
はい で
device? Well, we've got up,
ヒ
down,
ア
side,
エル
side.
ヘ
That would be good for
ベザンクトゥ
scrolling. Maybe we could use the side button to modify those things, because
イ
how would
ク
we
フ
get front,
マーフトゥ
back, and toggling between camera view and viewport.
ほうはためちゃ
Go up. We want to assign a numpad here. So let's say up gives us numpad 8. Let's OK that. So we go OK. Numpad sign has a press. So basically I'm just talking out loud here. But it's a logic that I can
English.
build on. And this shows you just how versatile this device is.
それが
Designing your own
ラーニング
custom
ブレンダ
key
ー。
sets, and you can do this in any way that you want. So let's test this new thing out. Say that's camera. Okay, that
Very
toggles between.
があって。いいですね。さて、俺は
何を食べましたか？
nothing. アップアンデミル。
Seems good, seems good.
で、英語好きにさいぞかしい。
Indistinct.
さいぞかしくなっちゃったな。I start to use 暗記じゃない 4K モニター全枚Stream frame become messy. Indistinct. あ、真面目。サスなんだけど、セパレイテ。スティンクテ。ノット。パレイテで分別のある。不明まれ。インディスティンクテ。クルードウィン。天然のままだよ。骨に下品。クルードウィン。クルードウィン。ノンネアラス。にもかかわらず。ので、レス。惨めな不潔なし、オクシー。 liable。liable は illegally responsible for paying the cost of something. liable to do something. likely to do. 何々しがち。辞書で引かないといまいちわからん。いや、ちぎりやすいしかねない連帯保証人。ああ、そうだ。忘れてた。何や、もう。いつものやつを忘れてた。華やかでいい。こういう風に大きく文字が書いてあるのはいい。Ninja keys, your work space is work frame is good. 上に時間とあとサブスクライバーとかチアと自分は何かを示してるのはいい。で、文字も大きいから見やすくていい。
Pirates of the Caribbean is also Disney, right? Or was that something else? there still coming a new Pirates of the Caribbean? I enjoyed the first three the most. The other ones feel a bit, I don't know, man.
文字に重ねちゃってもなんかいい気がする。
Maybe a bit different.
全然悪くない。
The vibes, I don't know. Cheers, ninjas. What's up over? What? Red crayons. So ninjas. Why do nurses like red crayons?
なるほど。手元のカメラと絵が一緒にあるってのがアナログのいいとこ。ありがとう、忍者キー。ライアボー。likely to do something 陥りやすい。ああ、2個取っときゃいいでしょう。ああ。
Deliberately.
Deliver, rightly. Deliberately. 慎重に濃いね。デリベライデリ慎重に濃い。イネビタボー。アナテンナボー。避けられない。どうしようもない。アナボイダボー。アナボイダボー。ビクティブ。被害者。ビクティブ。口を通らす。ストリーム。ポーチ。寝る。
Dismissal。
ディスミーザーを。解散。解雇却下。ディスミーザーを。
Myriad。
ミリアで。ミリアで。パープレックスで。困った途方に暮れた草な。パープレックスで。困った途方に暮れた。コンフューズで。パープレックスで。困った途方に暮れた。パープレックスで。 パープレックス。コンフューズで。バッフォー。バッフォー。困惑させる。失敗させる。バッフォー。パープレックス、バッフォー。全然覚えらんねえ。バッフォー。困惑失敗、バッフォー。フォースカミン。開放的。すぐ手助けしてくれる。健康的な。すぐ手助けする。クルードイ、ひどい。クルードで、露骨下品。天然のまま、クルードイ。ブラって。わんぱ小僧。ブラって。結び目。ノット。アナテーナボー。
Arigato.
You are. Stream. Stream frame is very good. I will. Take a peek. めっちゃいいな。アナテーナボー。アナテーナボー。出現不可能。アテーナボー。孫っ子。ステップドーター。ステップドーター。ラスティック。田舎の荒作り質素なプラスティック。やっぱり少し触ると200とかたまる。エンバーク。ホエール。積み込む投資乗りだ。エンバーク。乗り込む投資。執行実施。エンファサイズメント。エンフォースメント。エンフォースメント。 惨めなポキシーじゃなくて、いいのか、ポキシー。シャーペンで尖った。研ぎ澄まされた。シャーペンでひたすらごまかす。ひたすらごまかす。テンプ。ひたすらごまかす。いじる。イリューで逃れ、受け逃す。イリューで逃れる、受け逃す。イリューで逃れる、受け逃す。インディスティンクト。真面目な。不明まれ。インディスティンクト。不明まれ。vargue hazy。インディスティンクト、hague hazy。vargue hazy。vargue hazy。分別ある。タッテフル分別する。セパレイテ。ファーセパレイテ。ディスクリート。分別ある。慎重な控えめな。ディスクリート。はい、もういい、もういい、もういいちゃ。こんにちは。おはよう。うわ。discreet。分別ある。慎重控えめ。discreet。
Crying face。
寝ることはいいこと。いつまでとかあるやつ。
じゃあね、バイバイ。
いってらっしゃい。頑張って。ディスクリート。分別。慎重控えめ。tactful。so nearly to separate.
Nonetheless.
Nonetheless. Nonetheless. Nonetheless. ノンネレス。それにもかかわらず、ライアボロ、保証人、熱しがち、ち入りやすい、ライアボー、血を通らす、すねる、プローン、パウって、ノット、うなずく、居眠りする。に行く。come over. not right. all out of work. all out of work, not right. 天の絶妙なセレスティア。ハーウェイ、アイオ、パッセージウェイ、コリドー、リーグで、リーグでゲーム、リーグで。不正に操作されたリーグで。トーラス。子牛だ。フラッシー。フラッシー。派手。チャラい。フラッシー。葬儀屋。マグで。モーティシャン。葬儀屋。モーティシャン。真剣に。intently 悔やみ当時。コンドン。コンドランス。クルーデレイ。荒削りのむき出し。天然のまま。下品にクルーデレイ。deliberately わざと。真剣に故意に deliberately。で、しがち。あえてする。で、ニューリベラリズム。政府が熱くがね、ソーシャルリベラリズム、ニューリベラリズム。ネオリベが、政府が熱く、薄く。そうし、ネオリベラリズム。天然のまま露骨下品。クルードリー。意味合い。インプリケーション。ライト。名字。ラーネイム。職人作者。ライト。ミリアで。
Myriad.
Ability to do something successfully. Competence. きた。達成するのが The power that are called inevitable. アナテーナボ、避けられない、どうしようもない。inevitable. アナテーナボ、洞察力ある。insightful. 洞察力ある。展示で混ざった展示で混ざった展示でパープレックスで困らせる。コンフューズで途方に組まれた。2つな。パープレックスでグリーフ、うめき声、嘆き。grieve.
Dismissal.
Dismissal. Dismissal. 解散、解雇却下。Dismissal. 解散解雇却下。ディスミサル。ディスミサル解散解雇。ディスね。The act of dismissing somebody from their job. An example of this.よし。ミザホ。Hello?
What's up? It's Mike. Long time no see. You've been slacking off. Look, are you really up for studying English?
No.
No, I'm not.
What? You have to try way harder than that.
What?
Later.
You try hard.
Hello, telephone receiver, pog bones.
Hi, good evening. Telephone receiver. I am.
PogChamp, 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 PogChamp.
Is this your first visit to
Is this a first visit? I came here what?
But I was only 5 years old at the time.
Are you here on business?
I feel busy.
Yes, I'm attending a conference on global warming at the Royal College, but I hope to do some sightseeing afterwards.
Afterward. Sightseeing afterward.
Is this your first visit to London?
Is this first visit? Is this first visit to London? Is this your first visit to London?
Is this your first visit to London?
I came here once before,
but
I was only
but
5
I was
years old at the time.
only 5 years over time.
I came here once before,
Once before,
but I was only
but
5
I was
years old
only
at the time.
Over the time.
I came here once before, but I was only 5 years old at the time.
One.
I came here once before, but I was only 5 years old at the time.
Once before. But I came here once before,
but I was only 5 years old at the time.
Was
I came here once before, but I was only 5 years old at the time.
5 years old.
I came here once before, but I was only 5 years old at the time.
To that time. Only 5 years old at that time.
Are you here on business?
Are you here on business? Here on business. Are you here on business? Yes, I'm attending a conference over Royal College.
Yes, I'm attending a conference on global warming at the Royal College.
I'm attending a conference.
Yes, I'm attending a conference on global warming at the Royal College. Yes, I'm attending a conference on global warming at the Royal College.
Conference.会議。Conference 会議。もう一問。
Yes, I'm attending a conference on global warming at the Royal
I'm
College.
Conference.
Yes, I'm attending a conference on global warming at the Royal College.
Global warming. Yes, I'm attending a conference on global warming
at the Royal College.
at the Royal College. Yes, I'm attending a conference on global warming at the Royal College.
But I hope to do some sightseeing
But
afterwards.
I'm hoping, but
I hope to do some sightseeing afterwards.
I hope to sightseeing after.
But I hope to do some sightseeing
Some
afterwards.
sightseeing afterward. but I want to do some side thing afterward. But I hope
sightseeing afterwards.
I'm seeing afterward. Today learning English is over. はい、will walk out.
Wo ist Orange-kun? He heard you coming and ran away Thursday 0x3 TPC. Poro sad. I think he is getting ready to exercise. He. exercises after 30k points nowadays. LOL.
結局歩くかな。なんかな。 電話どうやってつけるんだ。使い方がわかんない。今、この使い方を学びたいんだけど、どうやったら安定するか。今、スタビライザーの使い方を学んでいます。で、これを押すと回転するって書いてあるんだけど、何も動かない。スクリーンを閉める。 で、リモコンの右回りボタンをタッチしたまま、リモコンの電源キーを3秒押して、オンにして、ペアリングを完成する。どうやるのか全くわかんない。なるほど。まずこっちを先に入れる。ああ、へえ、すごい。これを90度にできる。はあ、すごい。なるほどね。はいはいはい。これがだいたい3時間ぐらい続くと。うん。 じゃあ、this stream is end and I will start outdoor walk out. See you.